Welcome to another episode of Boring History for Sleep, the channel where we dive into the most uneventful, repetitive, and soothing details of the past, crafted to lull you into a state of calm or perhaps even guide you gently into slumber. Tonight, we're going to explore a topic so steeped in routine, so predictable in its daily grind, that it might just be the perfect companion for your evening wind down. We're talking about the monotonous daily routines of 18th-century farmers. Those tireless souls who lived lives dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, by the slow turning of seasons, and by tasks so repetitive they could make even the most restless mind drift into tranquility. Picture yourself, if you will, in a quiet, rural landscape somewhere in the 18th century. Perhaps it's the rolling hills of England, the fertile plains of colonial America, or a small village in France. The air is cool, the stars are fading in the pre-dawn sky, and the world is still cloaked in that soft, heavy silence that comes just before the first rooster crows. This is the world of the 18th century farmer. A world where every day unfolds with the same predictable rhythm, where each task is as familiar as the one before it, and where the passage of time is marked not by grand events but by the steady, unchanging cycle of work. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let's step into this world together, letting its simplicity and repetition wash over you like a gentle tide. Now, before we begin our journey through the farmer's day, let's set the scene with a bit of context. The 18th century was a time before machinery transformed agriculture, before tractors or combines or even the simplest mechanical tools that we now take for granted. Farming in this era was a labor-intensive endeavor, one that relied almost entirely on human strength, animal power, and the whims of nature. Most people in the 18th century lived in rural areas, and the vast majority of them were farmers or tied to the land in some way. Their lives were governed by the seasons, by the weather, and by the needs of their crops and livestock. There were no weekends, no vacations, no sick days, only the relentless march of tasks that needed doing. Day after day, year after year. The farmer's life was not glamorous. It was not filled with adventure or variety. It was, in a word, monotonous. And that's exactly why it's perfect for our purposes tonight. There's something deeply soothing about monotony, about knowing that each day will unfold in much the same way as the one before it. So, as we begin, let's imagine a typical farmer. Let's call him Thomas, though his name could just as easily be Jean, or Hans, or Samuel, depending on where in the world he lives. Thomas is a man of the land, weathered by years of toil, his hands calloused, his face lined from squinting into the sun. His life is one of routine, and we're going to walk through his day, step by step, in exhaustive, repetitive detail. Let's start with the very beginning of his day, the morning. It's still dark outside when Thomas wakes. The year is, let's say, 1750, and the time is somewhere around 4 in the morning. Though Thomas doesn't have a clock to tell him so. He doesn't need one. His body knows the time, tuned as it is to the rhythms of the natural world. The air in his small, drafty farmhouse is chilly, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and makes you reluctant to leave the warmth of the straw-filled mattress. But Thomas doesn't linger. There's work to be done, and the day won't wait. He rises quietly, careful not to disturb his wife, Mary, who is still asleep, or the children, who are curled up in their beds in the corner of the room. The house is simple, perhaps just 1 or 2 rooms, with a packed dirt floor and a fireplace that's gone cold overnight. The silence is profound, broken only by the soft creak of the wooden floorboards under Thomas's feet. Thomas's first task is to dress, a process that is as routine as breathing. He pulls on his rough linen shirt, the same one he's worn for days, perhaps weeks, without washing, because laundry is a luxury that happens only when time and water allow. Over the shirt goes a waistcoat, patched and faded from years of use. And then his breeches, sturdy but stained with the dirt of the fields. His stockings are wool, darned in places where holes have formed. And his shoes are heavy, leather things, scuffed and worn but still serviceable. There's no mirror in the house. No need for one. Thomas doesn't care about his appearance, only about getting through the day's work. He ties a neckerchief around his throat, pulls on a broad-brimmed hat to shield him from the sun later. And he's ready to face the day. Now, the first order of business is to start a fire. The hearth is the heart of the farmhouse. And without it, there's no warmth, no food, no hot water. Thomas kneels by the fireplace. His movements slow and deliberate. He sweeps away the ashes from yesterday's fire, piling them carefully to one side. Then he reaches for the kindling, small sticks and twigs he or the children gathered from the nearby woods. He arranges them in a neat pile, each stick placed just so. A task he's done thousands of times before. Over the kindling, he adds a few larger logs, split by his own hand with an axe the previous week. The wood is dry, seasoned over months, and it will burn well. But first, he needs a spark. Thomas takes his flint and steel from a small box near the hearth. He strikes the steel against the flint. Once, twice, 3 times, each strike producing a tiny shower of sparks that fizzle out in the dim light. He's patient, unhurried. There's no rush in this world, only the steady rhythm of effort. On the 4th or 5th strike, a spark catches in the tinder. A scrap of dried moss or charred cloth, and a tiny flame flickers to life. Thomas leans down, blowing gently, coaxing the flame until it spreads to the kindling. The fire crackles, its warmth slowly pushing back the chill of the room. He sits back on his heels, watching the flames for a moment. The same flames he's watched every morning for years. There's something hypnotic about it, something that makes the mind slow and the eyelids heavy. With the fire going, Thomas turns his attention to the next task, fetching water. The farmhouse doesn't have a well inside. Of course, that would be a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Instead, there's a well or a stream a short walk away, perhaps 100 yards across the yard or down a muddy path. Thomas picks up a wooden bucket, its handle worn smooth by years of use, and steps outside into the pre-dawn air. The world is still dark, the sky a deep indigo, with just a hint of gray at the horizon. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of dew-soaked grass and the faint, earthy smell of the fields. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, a sound so familiar it barely registers in Thomas's mind. The walk to the water source is one Thomas could do in his sleep. His feet know every rut, every stone in the path. The bucket swings gently at his side, its weight familiar in his hand. When he reaches the well, he lowers the bucket, listening to the faint splash as it hits the water below. He turns the crank, hauling the bucket back up, the rope creaking softly with each turn. The water is cold, clear, and he fills the bucket to the brim, careful not to spill. Then he begins the walk back, the bucket heavier now, pulling at his arm. He doesn't mind. This is just what mornings are, step after step, task after task, each one blending into the next. Back at the house, Thomas pours some of the water into a large iron kettle and hangs it over the fire to heat. The rest he sets aside for the animals, who will need it soon. The fire is burning steadily now, and the room is beginning to warm, though the corners still hold a stubborn chill. Mary is awake now, moving quietly about the house, her own morning routine beginning. She'll handle the cooking, the cleaning, the care of the younger children, while Thomas tends to the animals and the fields. Their roles are clear, unspoken, honed by years of living this life together. Now it's time for Thomas to check on the animals. The farm isn't large, perhaps a few acres of crops, a small pasture, and a handful of livestock. There's a cow or two, maybe a few pigs, some chickens, and, if Thomas is lucky, a horse or an ox for plowing. The animals are housed in a small barn or shed near the house. Their warmth and smell a constant presence in the farmer's life. Thomas grabs a lantern, its faint glow barely cutting through the darkness, and heads out again. The yard is quiet, the grass damp underfoot, and the air carries the faint musk of manure and hay. Inside the barn, the animals are stirring, sensing the approach of morning. The cow lows softly, her breath visible in the cool air. Thomas hangs the lantern on a hook and begins his rounds. First, he checks the cow, running his hands along her flanks to make sure she's healthy, her udder full for milking. He scatters fresh straw in her stall, the same straw he cut and stored last summer. Its golden color faded now but still soft. The pigs are next, snuffling in their pen, always eager for food. Thomas tosses them a handful of scraps, vegetable peels, stale bread, whatever the family didn't eat yesterday. The chickens cluck and flutter as he enters their co-op, and he scatters grain for them, watching as they peck at the ground with quick, jerky movements. Milking the cow is the next task, one that requires a steady hand and a calm demeanor. Thomas pulls a three-legged stool from the corner of the barn and settles beside the cow. Placing a clean bucket beneath her, he leans forward, his hands finding the rhythm he's known since childhood: squeeze, release, squeeze, release. The milk streams into the bucket, a soft, rhythmic sound that's almost musical in its consistency. Squirt, squirt, squirt. The bucket fills slowly, the milk warm and frothy. And Thomas's mind drifts as he works. There's no need to think, no need to plan. This is just what he does, what he's always done, what he'll do tomorrow and the day after that. When the bucket is full, Thomas carries it back to the house, where Mary will strain it and set some aside for butter or cheese. The sky is lighter now, the horizon glowing with the first hints of dawn. The air is still cool, but the promise of warmth is there, a reminder that the day is moving forward. Thomas pauses for a moment, looking out over the fields that stretch beyond the house. They're not large fields, not like the estates of the gentry, but they're his, or at least they're his to work. The crops, wheat, barley, perhaps some oats, are still young. Their green shoots just beginning to push through the soil. They'll need tending today, as they do every day. But that's for later. For now, Thomas returns to the house for breakfast. The meal is simple, as it always is. Mary has prepared a porridge of oats or barley, cooked over the fire in the kettle. There's no sugar to sweeten it, but perhaps a bit of milk from the cow or a drizzle of honey if the bees have been kind this year. The family eats together, sitting on rough wooden benches at a table that's seen decades of use. The children are sleepy, their eyes heavy, but they eat quickly, knowing their own chores await. There's no conversation, or if there is, it's brief, remarks about the weather, the animals, the work to be done. This is not a time for chatter, not a time for excitement. It's just breakfast, the same as yesterday, the same as tomorrow. With breakfast finished, Thomas prepares for the day's main work. The morning is still young, the sun just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the yard. He gathers his tools, a hoe, a sickle, perhaps a wooden rake, all of them worn but carefully maintained. He checks the weather, squinting at the sky, noting the clouds, the direction of the wind. The weather matters more than anything else in this life. Too much rain, and the crops will rot. Too little, and they'll wither. But today, let's say, the sky is clear, the air calm. It's a good day for working the fields. And Thomas feels a quiet satisfaction in that. Before he heads out, there's one more task: feeding the animals properly. The chickens got their grain earlier, but the cow and pigs need more substantial fare. Thomas hauls a bucket of water to the barn, pouring it into the troughs. Then he adds hay for the cow, perhaps some turnips or scraps for the pigs. The horse, if he has one, gets a measure of oats, carefully rationed to keep the animal strong for plowing. Each task is done with the same unhurried care, the same attention to detail. There's no need to rush, no need to innovate. This is how it's done, how it's always been done. As Thomas steps out into the yard, the sun is fully up now, its light spilling over the landscape. The fields are waiting, the crops are waiting, the animals are waiting. The day stretches ahead, long and full of work. But Thomas doesn't mind. This is his life, his routine, his world. And as we leave him here, ready to begin his work in the fields, let's pause and let the rhythm of his morning settle over us. The crackle of the fire, the creak of the bucket, the soft squirt of milk, the cluck of chickens, the rustle of straw, all of it blending into a symphony of monotony. A lullaby of repetition. If you're still awake, don't worry, we'll continue this journey in the next part, following Thomas through the rest of his day, through the endless tasks that fill his hours, each one as predictable as the last. For now, let your mind drift, let your breathing slow, and let the quiet, unchanging world of the 18th century farmer carry you towards sleep, where we immerse ourselves in the endlessly repetitive, wonderfully uneventful details of the past, designed to guide you into a state of calm or perhaps lull you gently into slumber. If you're joining us again, you've already met Thomas, our 18th century farmer, a man whose life is a tapestry of routine, woven from the same threads day after day. In our last episode, we followed Thomas through the quiet, predictable hours of his morning, waking in the pre-dawn chill, lighting the fire, fetching water, tending to the animals, and eating a simple breakfast. Now, as the sun climbs higher in the sky, we're going to continue our journey through his day, focusing on the midday hours, the fieldwork, and the steady, unchanging tasks that fill his world. If you're new here, don't worry, there's nothing complicated to catch up on. This is a story of simplicity, of repetition, of a life so steady it might just carry you off to sleep. Picture the scene. It's mid-morning now, sometime around 9 or 10 o'clock, though Thomas doesn't have a watch or a clock to mark the time. He doesn't need one. The sun is his guide, its position in the sky telling him everything he needs to know. The year is still 1750, and we're in a rural landscape, perhaps the English countryside, the American colonies, or a small village in Europe. The air is warming, the dew has burned off the grass, and the fields are bathed in soft, golden light. The world is alive with the hum of insects, the distant lowing of a cow, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. It's a peaceful scene, but for Thomas, it's just another day, another set of tasks, each one as familiar as the last. Thomas is ready to head to the fields now, his tools in hand, a hoe, a sickle, a wooden rake, all of them worn smooth by years of use. His hat is pulled low to shield his eyes from the sun and his boots are caked with the mud of the yard. The fields aren't far, just beyond the house, a patchwork of small plots that make up his farm. They're not vast estates, not like those owned by the gentry or the lords. These are modest fields, enough to feed his family and perhaps produce a small surplus to sell or trade. The crops are simple: wheat, barley, oats, maybe some rye or turnips, plants that have been grown here for generations. Their cycles as predictable as the seasons. As Thomas walks to the fields, his steps are steady, unhurried. There's no rush in this life, no urgency. The work will get done, as it always does, in its own time. The path is familiar, worn by his own feet and those of his family. A narrow track that winds past the barn, through a gate, and into the open fields. The gate creaks as he opens it, a sound so constant it barely registers. He closes it behind him, making sure the latch is secure. Cows and pigs have a way of wandering if you're not careful. And Thomas has learned that lesson the hard way. The field he's working today is planted with wheat, its green stalks swaying gently in the breeze. It's early summer, let's say, and the wheat is still young, not yet ready for harvest. But young crops need care, and that's what Thomas is here to provide. His first task is weeding, a job so repetitive it could make even the most restless mind grow quiet. Weeds are the enemy of the farmer, stealing water and nutrients from the crops, and they seem to spring up overnight, no matter how carefully the field is tended. Thomas grips his hoe, its handle polished by years of use, and begins to work. He moves down the rows, one step at a time, his eyes scanning the ground for the telltale signs of weeds, dandelions, thistles, chickweed, all of them familiar foes. When he spots one, he positions the hoe carefully, digging its blade into the soil to cut the weed at its root. The motion is smooth, practiced, the same motion he's made thousands of times before. Scrape, pull, toss, scrape, pull, toss. The weeds pile up at the edge of the row, their leaves already wilting in the sun. Thomas doesn't think about the task as he works. His hands know what to do. His body knows the rhythm. The sun climbs higher, the air grows warmer, and the field stretches out before him, row after row, each one waiting for his attention. The work is slow, methodical, almost meditative. Thomas moves from one row to the next, his hoe rising and falling, the soft thud of the blade against the earth blending with the chirping of birds and the rustle of the wheat. There's no variation, no excitement, just the steady repetition of effort. If a stone gets in his way, he pauses to pry it loose, tossing it to the edge of the field where it joins a growing pile. If the soil is too dry, he makes a mental note to fetch water later. Though irrigation is a luxury he can rarely afford, most of the time, he relies on the rain, trusting that the skies will open when the crops need it most. After an hour or two, Thomas pauses to wipe the sweat from his brow. The sun is high now, beating down on the fields, and his shirt is damp with perspiration. He doesn't have a canteen or a bottle of water. Such things are uncommon in this world. Instead, he walks to the edge of the field, where a small stream runs through a ditch. He kneels, cupping his hands to scoop the water. Drinking deeply. The water is cool, tasting faintly of earth, and it refreshes him just enough to keep going. He splashes some on his face, letting it drip down his neck, then stands and returns to his work. There's no break, not really, just a moment to catch his breath before the routine continues. Back in the field, Thomas switches tasks. The wheat needs more than just weeding, it needs to be checked for pests, for signs of disease, for anything that might threaten the harvest. He walks the rows again, this time bending low to inspect the stalks. His fingers brush against the leaves, feeling for the telltale stickiness of aphids or the powdery coating of mildew. If he finds something amiss, a cluster of insects, a patch of yellowing leaves, he deals with it as best he can. Aphids can be brushed off by hand, though it's a tedious process. Mildew is trickier, often a sign that the field is too damp, and there's little Thomas can do but hope it doesn't spread. He makes a note to check again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Farming is nothing if not a cycle of vigilance. By now, it's nearing noon, and the sun is at its peak. The heat is heavy, the air thick with the scent of warm earth and growing things. Thomas's stomach is beginning to rumble, a reminder that lunch is approaching. But there's one more task to complete before he heads back to the house: repairing the field's boundaries. The fields are separated by low stone walls or hedges, simple barriers that keep animals out and mark the edges of Thomas's land. These boundaries need constant maintenance, as stones shift and hedges grow wild. Today, Thomas notices a gap in the hedge where a branch has broken, leaving an opening just wide enough for a sheep to slip through. He sets his hoe aside and picks up a pair of shears. Their blades dull but still functional. The hedge is hawthorn, tough and thorny, and cutting it is slow work. Thomas trims the broken branch, then weaves new shoots into the gap, bending them carefully to create a living barrier. It's not perfect, but it'll hold for now. He steps back, inspecting his work, then adds a few stones to the base of the hedge for good measure. The stones are heavy, their surfaces rough against his hands, but Thomas is used to the weight. He carries them one by one from the pile at the field's edge, placing them with care, each one fitting snugly against its neighbor. It's a small task, but it matters. Everything matters in this life. Every detail, every moment of effort. With the hedge repaired, Thomas gathers his tools and begins the walk back to the house. The sun is high, the shadows short, and the yard is quiet as he approaches. The chickens are scratching in the dirt. The cow is grazing in the pasture, and the air carries the faint smell of wood smoke from the farmhouse chimney. Mary is inside, preparing lunch, and the children are busy with their own chores, fetching firewood, feeding the pigs, or perhaps helping with the cooking. The family works as a unit, each person with their role, each task part of the larger rhythm of the day. Lunch is a simple affair. Much like breakfast, Mary has made a stew, perhaps from barley and vegetables, carrots, onions, maybe some cabbage, simmered over the fire in the same iron kettle used this morning. There's bread, baked a few days ago. Its crust hard but still edible when dipped in the stew. If the family is lucky, there might be a bit of cheese, made from the cow's milk and carefully rationed. Thomas and the family sit at the same rough wooden table, eating in near silence. The children are hungry, their spoons scraping against the wooden bowls. But there's no rush, no chatter. This is just lunch, a pause in the day, a moment to refuel before the work continues. Thomas eats slowly, his body tired but not exhausted. He's used to this pace, this life. The stew is warm, filling, its flavors simple but comforting. He tears off a piece of bread, dipping it in the broth, and chews thoughtfully, his eyes drifting to the window where the fields are visible in the distance. There's more work to be done this afternoon, always more work, but for now, he lets himself rest, if only for a few minutes. Mary clears the table when they're finished, stacking the bowls to be washed later, when water and time allow. The children scatter to their chores, and Thomas rises, stretching his arms, ready to return to the fields. Before he heads out, there's a small task to attend to: checking the tools. The hoe he used this morning is still serviceable, but the blade is starting to dull, and a dull tool is a farmer's frustration. Thomas takes it to the barn, where a whetstone waits on a bench. He sits, the stone between his knees, and begins to sharpen the blade, drawing it across the stone with slow, deliberate strokes. The sound is rhythmic, a soft scrape that blends with the distant clucking of the chickens. Scrape, scrape, scrape. He turns the blade, checking its edge, then sharpens the other side, his hands moving with the ease of long practice. When he's satisfied, he wipes the blade with a rag and sets the hoe aside, ready for the afternoon's work. Now it's time to return to the fields. But this time, Thomas has a different task in mind: plowing a small plot that's been left fallow. Plowing is heavy work, the kind that requires an animal's strength, and Thomas is fortunate to have an ox, a sturdy beast named Brownie who's been with the family for years. He heads to the pasture, calling softly to Brownie, who lifts his head and ambles over, his movements slow and steady. Thomas fits the ox with a wooden yoke, its surface worn smooth by years of use, and leads him to the barn, where the plow is stored. The plow is a simple thing, made of wood with an iron blade, heavy but manageable. Thomas checks it over, making sure the blade is secure, the wood free of cracks. Then he leads Brownie to the fallow plot, a small patch of land that's been resting for a season to regain its strength. Plowing is slow, methodical work, and Thomas settles into the rhythm as he guides the ox. He grips the plow's handles, his body leaning into the effort, while Brownie pulls steadily, the blade cutting into the soil. The earth turns over in neat furrows, dark and rich, ready to be planted with next season's crop. Step, pull, turn, step, pull, turn. The ox moves at his own pace, and Thomas doesn't rush him. There's no need, the work will get done, as it always does. The sun is lower now, the afternoon stretching on, but Thomas keeps going, row after row, until the plot is fully plowed. The field looks different now, its surface broken, its potential renewed. Thomas pauses, wiping his brow, and looks over his work. It's good, solid work, the kind that will feed his family in the months to come. He unhitches Brownie, leading him back to the pasture, where he gives the ox a handful of hay as a reward. The tools are returned to the barn, the plow wiped clean, the yoke hung on its peg. Everything has its place, its purpose, its moment in the cycle. As the afternoon fades, Thomas takes a moment to walk the farm, checking on the animals, the crops, the boundaries. The cow is still grazing. The pigs are dozing in their pen. The chickens are pecking at the ground. The fields are quiet, the wheat swaying in the breeze. The newly plowed plot waiting for its time. The air is cooler now, the sun dipping toward the horizon, and Thomas feels the weight of the day in his bones. But there's no hurry, no worry. This is just life, just another day, just another set of tasks. As we leave Thomas here, preparing to head back to the house for supper, let's let the rhythm of his midday settle over us. The scrape of the hoe, the thud of the plow, the creak of the gate, the soft lowing of the ox, all of it blending into a lullaby of monotony. A song of repetition that soothes the mind and calms the heart. If you're still awake, don't worry, we'll continue this journey in the next part, following Thomas through the evening hours, through the quiet tasks that close the day. For now, let your breathing slow, let your thoughts drift, and let the steady, unchanging world of the 18th century farmer carry you towards sleep. The sun is sinking now, its light softening into a warm, golden glow that spills across the fields, casting long shadows over the wheat and barley. It's late afternoon, edging toward evening, and Thomas, our 18th century farmer, is still moving through the steady rhythm of his day. The air is cooler, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and hay, and the world feels quieter, as if settling into the gentle hush that comes before night. Thomas's boots crunch softly on the path as he makes his way back toward the farmhouse. His tools slung over his shoulder, his body tired but accustomed to the weight of a day's work. There's no rush, no urgency, just the familiar cadence of tasks that need doing, each one blending into the next, as predictable as the setting sun. Before heading inside, Thomas pauses to check on the animals one last time. The barn is a short walk from the house, its weathered boards glowing faintly in the evening light. He steps inside, the air thick with the smell of straw and manure, and the animals stir at his approach. The cow, still chewing her cud, looks up with heavy-lidded eyes, her breath slow and steady. Thomas runs a hand along her flank, checking for any signs of discomfort. Though he knows she's fine, she always is. He scatters a bit more hay in her stall, fluffing it with his pitchfork, the tines scraping softly against the wooden floor. The pigs are next, snuffling in their pen, their snouts buried in the trough where he left scraps earlier. He adds a handful of turnip peels, watching as they root eagerly. Their grunts a low, rhythmic hum. The chickens are already roosting, perched in their coop, their feathers fluffed against the evening chill. Thomas checks the coop's door, making sure it's secure against foxes or weasels that might come prowling in the night. He moves slowly, deliberately, his hands finding the latch, testing it twice, just as he does every evening. The eggs will be collected tomorrow. There's no need to disturb the hens now. He scatters a bit of extra grain on the ground, a small gesture to keep them content, and the soft clucking fades as he steps back into the yard. The lantern he carries casts a faint, flickering light, its glow barely needed in the twilight. But he carries it anyway, a habit as old as the farm itself. With the animals settled, Thomas turns his attention to the tools. The hoe and rake he used today are leaning against the barn, their handles damp from the afternoon's work. He wipes them down with a rag, the cloth rough against the wood, removing dirt and moisture that might cause rot. The iron blade of the hoe gleams faintly in the lantern's light, sharpened just hours ago, and Thomas runs his thumb along its edge. Satisfied with its bite, he hangs the tools on their pegs inside the barn, each one in its proper place. The rake beside the shovel, the hoe beside the sickle. The barn is orderly, its contents a testament to years of care, and Thomas takes a moment to survey it, his eyes lingering on the familiar shapes in the dim light. The yard is quiet now, the chickens silent, the cows lowing faded into the distance. Thomas walks back to the house, his steps slow, the bucket he carried this morning swinging empty at his side. The farmhouse looms ahead, its chimney trailing a thin wisp of smoke, a sign that Mary is preparing supper. The windows glow faintly, the firelight spilling out into the dusk, and the air carries the faint smell of boiling vegetables and bread. Thomas pauses at the door, stomping his boots to shake off the mud, a gesture so ingrained he barely notices it. The door creaks as he pushes it open, its hinges worn but sturdy, and he steps into the warmth of the house. Inside, the farmhouse is alive with the quiet bustle of evening. Mary is at the hearth, stirring a pot that hangs over the fire, her movements as steady as Thomas's in the fields. The children are scattered about, some fetching water, others setting the table, their small hands busy with tasks they've done 100 times before. The room is warm, the fire crackling softly, its heat pushing back the chill that's beginning to settle outside. The table is the same rough wooden one they've always had, its surface scarred from years of use, and the benches are pulled close, ready for the family to gather. Supper is simple, as it always is. Tonight, it's a pottage, a thick stew of barley, onions, and whatever vegetables were harvested recently. Perhaps some carrots or parsnips. Mary has added a bit of herbs, thyme or parsley, gathered from the small garden near the house, to give it flavor. Though the taste is mild, familiar, unremarkable, there's bread, baked yesterday, its crust hard but softened by the broth when dipped. If the family is lucky, there's a small wedge of cheese, crumbly and sharp, saved for special moments or stretched to last the week. The meal is served in wooden bowls, the spoons carved by Thomas's own hand, their handles worn smooth by years of use. Thomas sits at the head of the table, his hat hung on a peg by the door, his hands folded briefly in a silent prayer. The family joins him, their faces lit by the fire's glow, and they eat in near silence. The only sounds the scrape of spoons, the soft crackle of the fire, the occasional murmur about the day's work. The children are tired, their eyes heavy, but they eat heartily, their bodies hungry from hours of chores. Thomas chews slowly, savoring the warmth of the pottage, its texture thick and comforting. He tears off a piece of bread, dipping it in the stew, and the rhythm of eating is as soothing as the rhythm of his work. Bite, chew, swallow, repeat. Mary serves seconds to those who want them, though portions are carefully measured. Food is precious, never wasted, and what's left in the pot will be saved for tomorrow, perhaps mixed with new ingredients to stretch it further. The cheese, if there is any, is divided sparingly, each child getting a small piece, their fingers quick to pop it into their mouths. Thomas watches them, his expression calm, his mind already drifting to the tasks that await tomorrow. There's no need to plan, no need to worry, the day will unfold as it always does. With the same chores, the same routines, the same quiet satisfaction. When supper is finished, the children clear the table, stacking the bowls by the hearth to be washed later. Mary banks the fire, adding a log to keep it burning low through the night, its embers glowing softly in the dim room. Thomas rises, stretching his arms, his body stiff from the day's labor. There's one more task before the evening is done, checking the house. He walks the small space, his lantern in hand, inspecting the windows, the door, the walls. The shutters are latched, the door barred, the roof, though he can't see it, trusted to hold against the night's dew or rain. It's a ritual, this final check, a way to ensure the family is safe, the house secure, the world outside kept at bay. With the house in order, Thomas returns to the hearth, where Mary is already preparing for bed. The children are settling down. Their beds, simple pallets of straw or wool, arranged in the corner of the room. The youngest are already half asleep, their breathing soft and even, while the older ones linger, helping with small tasks or whispering quietly. Thomas sits by the fire, his hands idle for the first time all day, and stares into the flames. The fire is low, its light flickering, and the room is filled with a deep, enveloping quiet. There's no conversation, no need for it. The day is done, the work complete, and the world is still. Mary joins him, her work finished, and they sit together, the fire's warmth wrapping around them. The children are all in bed now, their forms barely visible in the dim light, and the house feels smaller, cozier, as if drawing inward for the night. Thomas's eyes grow heavy, the weight of the day pulling at him, but he doesn't fight it. Sleep will come, as it always does, as natural as the tasks he's done since dawn. He rises, banking the fire one last time, the poker scraping softly against the logs, and then he moves to the bed he shares with Mary, a simple frame, a straw mattress, a woolen blanket worn thin but warm. He undresses slowly, peeling off his waistcoat, his shirt, his breeches, folding them neatly to be worn again tomorrow. His stockings are last, their wool darned in places, and he sets them by the bed, ready for the morning. The room is dark now, the fire's glow barely reaching the corners, and Thomas slips under the blanket, the straw rustling faintly beneath him. Mary is already there, her breathing steady, and he settles beside her, his body fitting into the familiar contours of the mattress. The house is silent, the world outside silent, and the only sound is the faint creak of the roof beams settling in the cool night air. Thomas closes his eyes, his mind empty, his body still. The day is over, but tomorrow will be the same, waking in the dark, lighting the fire, fetching water, tending the animals, working the fields, eating, sleeping. It's a cycle, unending, unchanging, and there's comfort in that. A deep, quiet peace that settles over him like a blanket. The farm is still, the fields are still, the world is still, and Thomas drifts toward sleep, carried by the rhythm of a life so steady, so predictable, it feels eternal. As we linger here, with Thomas and his family tucked into their beds, let's let the quiet of their evening wrap around us. The crackle of the fire, the scrape of the spoon, the creak of the door, the rustle of straw, all of it fading into a soft, soothing hum, a lullaby of repetition that calms the mind and eases the heart. If you're still with us, don't worry, we'll continue this journey in the final part, exploring the seasons, the cycles, the endless sameness of the farmer's life. For now, let your thoughts soften, let your breathing deepen, and let the tranquil, unchanging world of the 18th century farmer guide you towards sleep. The stars are bright in the night sky, their faint light filtering through the cracks in the farmhouse shutters, where Thomas and his family sleep. The year is still 1750, and the world outside is quiet, wrapped in the deep stillness of a rural night. The fields lie dormant under the moonlight, the crops waiting patiently for the sun, the animals huddled in their stalls, their breathing slow and steady. This is the world of the 18th century farmer, a world where time moves not in hours or days but in seasons. in cycles that repeat with the same unyielding rhythm year after year. Tonight, we're going to drift through those seasons, exploring the endless, unchanging tasks that mark the farmer's year: spring's planting, summer's tending, autumn's harvest, winter's rest, each one as predictable as the last, each one a thread in the tapestry of monotony that defines Thomas's life. Let's settle in, let the quiet of this world envelop us, and let the slow, repetitive rhythm of the seasons carry us toward calm. It's spring now, the air soft and damp, the ground thawing after the long, cold winter. The fields, which have lain fallow or covered in frost, are stirring with life, their surfaces dotted with the first green shoots of grass and weeds. Thomas wakes early, as he always does, his breath visible in the chilly dawn. The farmhouse is quiet, the fire low, and he moves through his morning routine with the same unhurried care, lighting the hearth, fetching water, tending the animals. But spring brings a new energy, a sense of purpose that underlies the repetition. The fields are calling, the crops need planting, and Thomas feels the weight of the season in his bones, a weight he's carried every spring of his life. The first task of spring is preparing the fields. The soil, compacted by winter's freeze, must be turned, broken, made ready for seeds. Thomas hitches his ox, Brownie, to the plow, the same wooden plow he's used for years, its iron blade polished by countless furrows. He leads Brownie to the field, the ox's steps slow and deliberate, the yoke creaking softly under the strain. The plow bites into the earth, turning it over in dark, rich waves, and Thomas guides it with a steady hand, his body leaning into the work. Step, pull, turn, step, pull, turn. The rhythm is hypnotic, the field stretching out before him, row after row, each furrow a promise of the harvest to come. The sun rises, the air warms, and Thomas keeps going, his hands calloused, his back bent, his mind empty of everything but the task at hand. Plowing is heavy work, but it's only the beginning. Once the field is turned, Thomas must harrow it, breaking up the clods of soil to create a smooth, even surface. He switches the plow for a wooden harrow, a simple frame studded with iron teeth, and hitches it to Brownie. The ox pulls, the harrow scrapes, and the soil crumbles under its weight, its texture softening, its color deepening. Thomas walks behind, guiding the harrow, his boots sinking into the freshly turned earth. The work is slow, methodical, each pass smoothing the field a little more, each step blending into the next. He doesn't think about the hours, the effort, the ache in his shoulders. This is just spring, just what he does, just what he's always done. When the field is ready, it's time to plant. Thomas carries a sack of seeds: wheat, barley, perhaps some oats, carefully saved from last year's harvest. The seeds are precious, each one a small miracle, and he handles them with care, his fingers sorting through the grains, checking for mold or rot. He walks the field, broadcasting the seeds by hand, his arms swinging in a wide, practiced arc. The seeds scatter, falling to the earth in a soft patter, their pattern random but even, a skill honed by years of repetition. Step, swing, scatter, step, swing, scatter. The field drinks them in, the soil closing over them, hiding them from view. Thomas moves down the rows, his sack lightening, his steps steady, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Planting is not a one-day task. It stretches over weeks, each field prepared and sown in turn, each crop chosen for its season, its soil, its yield. Thomas plants wheat in one field, barley in another, oats in a third, perhaps some turnips or peas in a smaller plot near the house. The work is the same, the rhythm unchanged: plow, harrow, plant, repeat. Mary helps when she can, scattering seeds or tending the garden, where she grows herbs and vegetables for the family. The children, too, have their roles, carrying water, pulling weeds, chasing birds that might eat the newly sown seeds. The family moves as one, their efforts woven into the fabric of spring, their tasks as familiar as the earth beneath their feet. Spring is also a time for the animals. The cow, heavy with calf, needs extra care, her stall kept clean, her feed supplemented with fresh grass. Thomas checks her daily, his hands gentle, his eyes sharp for signs of distress. The pigs, too, are thriving, their pen muddy from spring rains, their appetites endless. He tosses them scraps, watches them root, and reinforces their pen with stones or wood to keep them contained. The chickens are laying again, their eggs a small bounty, and Thomas builds new nesting boxes, hammering pegs into wood with a mallet. The sound a dull thud in the quiet yard. Each task is small, repetitive, essential, a piece of the puzzle that is spring. As spring fades into summer, the world changes, but the monotony remains. The air is warm now, the days long, the fields green with growing crops. Thomas's work shifts from planting to tending, a season of vigilance and care. The wheat is taller now, its stalks swaying in the breeze. But it's not alone. Weeds have sprung up, as they always do, their roots stealing water, their leaves crowding the crops. Thomas takes his hoe, its blade sharp from the whetstone, and begins the slow work of weeding. He moves down the rows, his eyes scanning, his hands striking, scrape, pull, toss, scrape, pull, toss. The weeds pile up, their leaves wilting, and Thomas keeps going, row after row, field after field, his body moving with the ease of long practice. Summer brings other tasks, each one as repetitive as the last. The crops need water, and if the rains are scarce, Thomas must carry it from the stream, bucket after bucket, his arms aching under the weight. He pours the water carefully, soaking the roots, avoiding the leaves, his movements precise, unhurried. The fields need checking for pests, aphids, beetles, caterpillars, that can ruin a crop in days. Thomas walks the rows, his fingers brushing the stalks, his eyes searching for the telltale signs of damage. If he finds a problem, he deals with it by hand, crushing insects, removing affected leaves, his actions slow, deliberate, unchanging. The animals, too, demand attention. The cow has calved, and the new calf needs watching. Its legs wobbly, its appetite fierce. Thomas builds a small pen to keep it safe, hammering stakes into the ground, weaving branches to form a barrier. The pigs are growing fat, their pen a constant mess, and he cleans it daily, shoveling manure to a pile that will fertilize the fields next year. The chickens are still laying, their co-op a flurry of feathers, and Thomas scatters grain, repairs the fence, collects eggs with the same steady rhythm. The horse or ox, if he has one, is worked harder in summer, pulling the harrow or cart, and Thomas checks its hooves, its harness, its feed, ensuring it's strong for the tasks ahead. Summer is also a time for maintenance. The farmhouse roof, patched last year, needs checking, its thatch thinning in places. Thomas climbs a ladder, his hands pulling at the straw, replacing what's worn with new bundles cut from the marsh. The barn's walls are sagging, and he shores them up with timber, hammering nails with a slow, steady beat. The fences and hedges around the fields are overgrown, and he trims them with shears, their blades snipping through hawthorn and bramble. Each task is small, each task is endless, each task is part of the season's rhythm, a rhythm that lulls the mind and soothes the soul. As summer gives way to autumn, the air cools, the days shorten, and the fields turn golden. This is the season of harvest, the culmination of the year's work, but it's no less monotonous than the rest. Thomas takes his sickle, its blade curved and sharp, and begins cutting the wheat. He moves through the field, his arms swinging, the stalks falling in neat bundles. Slice, gather, tie, slice, gather, tie. The work is backbreaking, the sun's still warm, but Thomas doesn't falter. He cuts, he binds, he stacks, the bundles piling up, the field emptying row by row. The children help, carrying bundles to the cart, their small hands quick, their voices quiet. Mary is there, too, tying sheaves, her fingers deft, her movements steady. Harvesting is not just cutting. The grain must be threshed, the kernels separated from the stalks. Thomas spreads the sheaves on a flat, hard surface, perhaps a wooden floor in the barn, and beats them with a flail. A simple tool of wood and leather. The flail rises and falls, its sound a dull thud, its rhythm unchanging. Thump, thump, thump. The grain falls free, the chaff scatters, and Thomas keeps going, his arms tireless, his mind blank. When the threshing is done, he winnows the grain, tossing it into the air with a basket, letting the wind carry the chaff away. The kernels fall back, heavy and golden, and he gathers them into sacks, their weight a quiet satisfaction. Autumn is also a time for other harvests. The turnips and peas, planted in spring, are ready now, their roots plump, their pods heavy. Thomas pulls them from the ground, his hands caked with dirt, his back bent. He carries them to the house, where Mary sorts them, storing some in the cellar, boiling others for supper. The apples in the small orchard are ripe, their branches sagging, and Thomas picks them one by one, his fingers twisting, the fruit falling into his basket. The work is slow, repetitive, endless, but it's autumn, and this is what autumn means: gathering, storing, preparing for the cold ahead. Winter arrives, and the world slows. The fields are bare now, their surfaces hard with frost, their colors muted under a gray sky. Thomas's work changes, but the monotony remains. The animals need extra care, their stalls filled with straw, their feed rationed to last the season. He checks the cow daily, her breath steaming in the cold, her udder still full for milking. The pigs are huddled in their pen, their bodies warm against the chill, and he adds scraps to their trough, his hands numb from the cold. The chickens are roosting, their eggs fewer, and he insulates their co-op with old sacks, his fingers fumbling in the icy air. Winter is a time for indoor tasks. Thomas repairs tools, sharpening the plow's blade, mending the harrow's teeth, oiling the sickle's handle. He sits by the fire, the whetstone between his knees, the blade scraping softly, its sound a quiet lullaby. Scrape, scrape, scrape. He patches harnesses, stitches leather, carves new handles for broken tools. Each task small, each task familiar. Mary spins wool, her wheel humming, her hands steady, while the children card the fleece, their fingers pulling at the fibers, their movements slow and even. The farmhouse is warm, the fire burning low, and the world outside is silent, blanketed in snow or frost. Winter is also a time for planning. Though planning is too grand a word, Thomas thinks about the spring, about the fields, about the seeds he's saved. He sorts them by lamplight, his fingers sifting through the grains, his eyes checking for quality. He repairs the seed sack, stitching its seams, his needle moving in and out, the thread pulling tight. He checks the cellar, counting the turnips, the apples, the sacks of grain, ensuring they'll last until spring. Each task is deliberate, each task is repetitive, each task is part of the cycle that defines his life. The seasons turn, and the year begins again. Spring returns, and Thomas is back in the fields, plowing, harrowing, planting. Summer follows, and he's weeding, watering, tending. Autumn arrives, and he's harvesting, threshing, storing. Winter settles in, and he's repairing, planning, waiting. The tasks change, but the rhythm stays the same: slow, steady, unchanging. The fields are the same, the animals are the same, the farmhouse is the same. Thomas is older now, his hair grayer, his hands more weathered, but his life is as it's always been. A life of routine, of repetition, of quiet, endless work. There's comfort in this cycle, a deep, unspoken peace that comes from knowing what each day will bring, what each season will demand. Thomas doesn't question it, doesn't fight it. He rises, he works, he eats, he sleeps, and the world turns around him. Its rhythms as eternal as the stars. The wheat grows, the cow calves, the fire burns, the seasons shift, and Thomas moves through it all. His steps sure, his hands steady, his heart calm. This is his world, his life, his legacy, a legacy of monotony, of sameness, of quiet, enduring effort. As we linger here, with Thomas in the quiet of a winter's night, let's let the rhythm of the season settle over us. The creak of the plow, the scrape of the hoe, the thud of the flail, the hum of the spinning wheel, all of it blending into a soft, soothing drone, a lullaby of repetition that calms the mind and eases the heart. The fields are still, the animals are still, the world is still, and we can rest in that stillness, letting it carry us towards sleep. But the story doesn't end here. There's more to explore, more to uncover in the quiet corners of Thomas's life, the tools he uses, the traditions he follows, the small, unchanging details that make up his world. If you're still with us, drifting in the haze of this monotonous tale, we'll continue in the next part, the final chapter, where we'll tie these threads together, wrapping up the farmer's life in a way that's as gentle and predictable as the life itself. For now, Let your thoughts soften, let your breathing deepen, and let the tranquil, unchanging world of the 18th century farmer guide you toward sleep. The night is deep now. The farmhouse cloaked in darkness, its walls creaking softly under the weight of a quiet winter's frost. Outside, the fields are still, their surfaces glimmering faintly with ice, the crops long harvested, the earth resting until spring. Inside, Thomas and his family sleep, their breathing slow and even, the fire's embers casting a faint, flickering glow across the room. It's 1750, and the world of the 18th century farmer is one of endless repetition, of tasks that blend into one another, of a life so steady it feels like it could go on forever. Tonight, in this final chapter, we're going to linger in the small, unchanging details of Thomas's world, the tools he uses, the traditions he follows, the quiet rhythms that define his existence. We'll reflect on his life, on the monotony that shapes it, and let its simplicity wrap around us like a warm blanket, guiding us toward calm, toward rest, perhaps toward sleep. Let's step back into this world one last time, letting its predictability, its sameness, carry us gently into the night. Thomas's life is built on tools, simple things of wood and iron, worn smooth by years of use, each one an extension of his hands, his will, his work. The plow is the heart of his farm, a heavy, unwieldy thing, its wooden frame scarred from countless seasons, its iron blade dulled and sharpened again and again. Thomas handles it with care, checking its bolts, tightening its joints, running his fingers along the grain of the wood. He sharpens the blade with a whetstone, the same stone his father used, its surface pitted but smooth, the sound of the blade against it a soft, rhythmic scrape, 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 scrape. The motion is slow, deliberate, his hands moving without thought, his eyes fixed on the blade as it gleams in the lantern's light. The plow is not just a tool, it's a partner, a constant in a life of constants. And Thomas tends to it as he tends to the land itself. The hoe is another companion, lighter than the plow, its handle polished by sweat and time. Thomas uses it for weeding, for breaking soil, for shaping the earth around young plants. He grips it firmly, his fingers fitting into the grooves worn by years of use, and swings it with a steady rhythm, scrape, pull, toss, scrape, pull, toss. The blade bites into the soil, uprooting weeds, smoothing furrows, its edge kept sharp by the same whetstone, the same care. When the day's work is done, Thomas wipes the hoe clean, its iron free of rust, its wood free of splinters, and hangs it on a peg in the barn. Its place is fixed as the stars in the sky. The sickle is smaller, its curved blade designed for harvesting, for cutting wheat and barley with a single, sweeping motion. Thomas holds it lightly, his wrist flicking, the stalks falling in neat bundles. Slice, gather, tie, slice, gather, tie. The sickle's blade is delicate, prone to nicks, and Thomas sharpens it often. The whetstones scrape a familiar sound in the quiet of the barn. He tests the edge with his thumb, feeling for burrs, ensuring it's ready for the next day's work. The sickle is old, its handle worn, its blade thinned by years of sharpening, but it's still serviceable, still part of the cycle that defines the harvest. There's the flail, too, a simple tool for threshing, two sticks joined by a leather strap. Its design unchanged for centuries. Thomas swings it in the barn, the grain spread before him, the flail's head striking the stalks with a dull, repetitive thud. Thump, thump, thump. The kernels fall free, the chaff scatters, and Thomas keeps going, his arms tireless, his mind empty. The flail is heavy, its wood darkened by sweat, its leather worn but strong. When the threshing is done, he hangs it on the wall, its place beside the shovel, the rake, the pitchfork, each tool a piece of the puzzle, each one a thread in the fabric of his life. The pitchfork is for hay, for straw, for manure, its tines long and sturdy, its handle thick and balanced. Thomas uses it to clean the stalls, to pile hay for the cow, to turn the compost that will feed the fields. He thrusts it into the straw, lifting, tossing, spreading. The motion is natural as breathing. Lift, toss, spread, lift, toss, spread. The pitchfork's tines are iron, forged by a blacksmith years ago, their tips blunted but still sharp enough for work. Thomas checks them for cracks, for bends, and straightens them with a hammer if needed, the metal ringing softly in the quiet barn. These tools are not just objects, they're part of Thomas's world. As familiar as the fields, the animals, the farmhouse, he maintains them with care, oiling the wood, sharpening the iron, mending the leather, each task a ritual, each task a repetition. He sits by the fire in winter, the tools spread before him, his hands busy with small repairs, a new handle for the hoe, a new strap for the flail, a new peg for the plow. The fire crackles, the wind hums outside, and Thomas works, his fingers steady, his mind calm, the world reduced to the simple act of care, of preservation, of continuation. Traditions, too, shaped Thomas's life, small rituals passed down through generations, each one as unchanging as the seasons. There's the blessing of the fields in spring, a quiet moment before planting, when Thomas and his family stand at the edge of the land. Their heads bowed, their voices soft. It's not a grand ceremony, not a spectacle, just a pause, a murmured prayer for rain, for sun, for a good harvest. Thomas doesn't know if the prayer matters, doesn't question it. It's what his father did, what his grandfather did, what he'll teach his children to do. The words are simple, the act brief, but it's part of the cycle, part of the rhythm, part of the monotony that binds the family to the land. There's the harvest supper in autumn, a meal slightly grander than the daily pottage, a way to mark the end of the reaping. Mary prepares a stew with meat, perhaps a chicken, its neck wrung that morning, its feathers saved for pillows. There's bread, fresh from the oven, its crust soft and warm, and perhaps a rare treat, an apple pie made from the orchard's bounty. The family gathers at the table, their faces lit by the fire, their hands folded in thanks. They eat slowly, the spoon scraping, the fire crackling, the children quiet but content. It's not a feast, not by the standards of the wealthy, but it's enough, and Thomas feels a quiet satisfaction, a sense that the year's work has been worth it. There's the mending circle in winter, when the family sits by the hearth, their hands busy with wool, with leather, with wood. Mary spins, her wheel humming, the wool twisting into thread. The children card the fleece, their fingers pulling, their movements slow and even. Thomas carves, his knife shaping a new spoon, a new peg, a new handle, the wood curling away in soft, pale shavings. The fire burns low, the room warm, the silence broken only by the hum of the wheel, the scrape of the knife, the rustle of wool. It's a tradition, this gathering, this shared work, and it binds them together. Their efforts small but essential, their presence a comfort in the cold, dark nights. There's the marking of the seasons, not with calendars but with signs, the first frost, the first blossom, the first ripe apple, the first snow. Thomas watches the sky, the trees, the ground, his eyes tuned to the subtle shifts that signal change. He doesn't need a date, doesn't need a name for the month. The world tells him what he needs to know, and he listens, his life shaped by its rhythms, its patterns, its repetitions. He teaches the children to watch, too, pointing out the way the clouds move, the way the birds sing, the way the earth smells after rain. It's a quiet lesson, a tradition of observation, of patience, of trust in the land. These traditions are not loud, not dramatic, they're small, woven into the fabric of daily life, as unremarkable as the tools, as predictable as the tasks, but they give Thomas's life shape, meaning, a sense of belonging to something larger than himself. They connect him to his father, to his grandfather, to the generations that worked this land before him, and to the generations that will come after. They're part of the monotony, part of the sameness, part of the quiet, enduring peace that defines his world. As we reflect on Thomas's life, we see a man shaped by repetition, by the endless cycle of work, by the tools and traditions that anchor him to the land. His days are the same, his seasons are the same, his life is the same, and there's a beauty in that, a simplicity that soothes the mind and calms the heart. Thomas doesn't seek change, doesn't dream of adventure. He rises with the sun, works with his hands, eats with his family, sleeps under the stars, and wakes to do it all again. His life is a lullaby, a soft, steady hum that carries him through the years, through the decades, through the quiet, unchanging days. The farmhouse is his world, its walls worn but strong, its hearth warm but simple. The fields are his canvas. Their furrows his art. Their harvests his legacy. The animals are his companions. Their needs his rhythm. Their presence his comfort. The tools are his hands. The traditions his heart. The seasons his timekeeper. Thomas is not a hero. Not a king. Not a man of grand deeds. He's a farmer. A man of the land. A man of monotony. And in that monotony, he finds peace, purpose, a life well lived. Let's linger here, in the quiet of Thomas's world. As the fire burns low. As the night deepens. As the stars wheel overhead. The plow rests in the barn. The hoe hangs on its peg. The sickle waits for the next harvest. The fields sleep. The animals sleep. The family sleeps. And Thomas sleeps. His breathing slow. His body still. His mind at rest. The world is as it's always been. As it always will be. And there's comfort in that. A deep, unspoken peace that settles over us like a blanket. If you're still with us, drifting in the haze of this endless, soothing tale, let the rhythm of Thomas's life carry you further. The crackle of the fire. The scrape of the whetstone. The thud of the flail. The hum of the spinning wheel, all of it blending into a soft, repetitive drone, a song of sameness that calms the mind and eases the soul. The farmhouse is still, the fields are still, the world is still, and we can rest in that stillness, letting it guide us toward sleep. This is the end of our journey, but not the end of Thomas's story. His life goes on, as it always has, as it always will, each day a mirror of the last, each season a reflection of the one before. If you close your eyes, you can see him still, rising in the dawn, working in the fields, sitting by the fire, sleeping under the stars. His world is yours now. A world of quiet, of repetition, of peace. Let it hold you, let it soothe you, let it carry you gently into the night. Good night.